West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Donald Trump's not the only one that's put himself up for sale to any investor, foreign or domestic, because he's financially compromised on the balls of his backside and has let the world know that he can be had for a price, along with, I expect, foreign policy if he ever returns to office. That brings us to the sordid tale, the ethically compromised Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's current son-in-law and former advisor to the president, along with his wife, Ivanka. We've never seen corruption or ethics violations at this level in our history. Immediately upon leaving office, within just 90 days, Jared Kushner was able to raise an immediate $2 billion from the Saudi Private Investment Fund, the PIF, under the expressed approval of the leader of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the person who all U.S. intelligence has confirmed was responsible for the terrible, violent death of Jamal Khashoggi, an American citizen and reporter for the Wall Street Journal, who was literally cut into pieces by Saudi security forces. Jared Kushner literally has taken blood money because MBS approved the $2 billion investment in his fund over objections by the private investment fund, the PIF's own board and advisors, who said they had grave doubts about the company's experience or lack of experience, and about Jared Kushner's lack of experience in investing, and with no proven track record. Despite that, MBS said, Jared Kushner, son-in-law of a president, somebody who could go back into office, we'll take it. And they invested $2 billion. Now, since then, every dollar that Jared Kushner's fund, the Affinity Fund, has taken in, up to $3 billion, has come not only from foreign sources, that's a given, as the foreign policy of a Trump future presidency is literally being sold before our very eyes, but every one of the investments came from a country or people for which he, Jared Kushner, was responsible and covered while he was a presidential advisor. This was his territory, the Gulf Arab states. He made it his remit. And then as soon as, literally the door had just slammed on him leaving, right? The tracks were freshly made, and he made $2 billion and now $3 billion of investment into the Affinity, only from countries and people that he had a relationship with while he was a presidential advisor. Forget about this phony impeachment analysis of Joe Biden about Hunter Biden making $3 million over several years on the board of Burisma in Ukraine. That's peanut money. That's pocket money. Even if that were true, that Hunter made that much, do you know how much Jared Kushner is making on a year-over-year basis just on management fees as an alleged investment advisor? Just that. Without even getting to any return on the investment if his fund does well or even makes $1, he makes $40 million a year over year, for basically doing nothing other than trading on his relationship building while his father-in-law was president and maybe is going to return. Look, I'd be less hot and bothered if Trump wasn't running for office again. But what we're watching is foreign policy for sale. Donald Trump's already will be, if he somehow finds a way back to the White House, and we allow that to happen, the most financially compromised president, subject to, of course, being turned by foreign assets, being bribed, we've ever seen. And now his son-in-law is a prime example. Sure, Jared Kushner takes the convenient position that he's not going back to the White House with his father, but does anybody think that despite him growing a beard and moving to Miami, that the reason that people are investing in Jared Kushner is because his name is Jared Kushner? Or is it because he's the son-in-law of a person they are betting on and banking on will be back in the White House and they'll have influence over foreign policy? We're watching the sale of foreign policy. In fact, Ben Rhodes, an advisor for Barack Obama in a recent interview, said exactly that. Let's take a listen.
Thank you for being here with me. As you look at it from a sort of foreign policy perspective, how does Kushner's entanglement with someone like MBS compromise potentially, the foreign policy platform of his father-in-law, who's running to be the next president of the United States?
Well, in a word, entirely, Alex. I mean, look, this is not subtle corruption that we're looking at. This is a guy, Jared Kushner, who had no expertise, no qualification whatsoever to be in the White House. While he was there, he made it his account to work in the Gulf Arab states. He basically helped lead the cover-up for MBS, get him in from the cold after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And look, the Saudis didn't make a $2 billion investment because they trusted in Jared Kushner's investment expertise. Does anybody in the world believe that $2 billion is based on an assessment that Jared Kushner is who you want to give your money to make a return? No, they're making an investment on what they think he can do for them if there is a second Trump term. And basically what we can take from that investment is that in a second Trump term, U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and around the world will be made entirely with the interests of Mohammed bin Salman in mind.
Let me take you through how Jared Kushner supposedly makes his $40 million a year before even having made an investment just off the money management, as a percentage of the money management, all disclosed in an SEC form filing. We have a copy of it. The form ADV for an investment advisor reflects all this for his affinity partners. Now, he's made investments, finally, in year 2 of some of the money. Again, only in countries and with people and entities for which he had a relationship, only because he was in the White House. Trading on the White House, selling future potential foreign policy, like it's some sort of futures market on the stock exchange. He's invested in Dubai, a place he covered. It was part of his remit as a special advisor to the president. In Abu Dhabi, same thing. In Israel, okay. In Germany, and in other places. So all the money he's taken up to $3 billion is only from investors from countries in which he was already responsible as allegedly a representative of the American people sworn to uphold our Constitution. And then you've got the investments that are being made similarly only there, not in American companies. This isn't, let me make this clear. Make America great again. Make America great again by taking in $3 billion of Saudi, United Arab Emirates, and other money, and Kuwaiti money, and investing it in other countries. None of the countries that I just described. This Israeli car leasing company, this Dubai real estate investment company, this Abu Dhabi fast food company that owns fast food chains in Brazil is helping Americans. This is that dirty little secret. If Donald Trump was a man of the people, and his family were too, they were trying to make America great again instead of trying to make my bank account as large as possible again. These investments wouldn't be, the money would be from Americans. Maybe some of these billionaires that just gave Donald Trump $50 million in some flashy Mar-a-Lago fundraiser because they're trying to buy a financially compromised candidate. Might as well. They've got everything else at the billionaire. They own the $150 million mansions. They own the islands. They have the 500-foot yachts. They own every plane imaginable. They have homes all around the world. What else? What else can I put up on my shelf? Donald Trump. I own him too. And I've been around these people in my career. That's how they talk. And so they put him up on and Jared Kushner, let's take Jared Kushner too, because he's looking for a buck. But I want to make this clear. Not $1 that has come into the affinity fund controlled by Jared Kushner. There's $40 million blood money that he's earned off of it. And the investments that he's making help everyday Americans. It's not helping you at the gas pump. It's not helping you while you're at the supermarket shopping for, milk and eggs and bread. It's helping Jared Kushner build a bigger house in Indian Creek in Miami. It's helping his wife, Ivanka, buy another gown, hang out with another famous person, right? Take another picture of herself and put it on Instagram. That's what you're paying for, as long as you know. We want to share an important message from our sponsor, Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Oklahoma recently approved the nation's first religious public school. Justice Sotomayor warned in her Carson versus Macon dissent that this Supreme Court continues to dismantle the wall of separation between church and state that the framers fought to build. We've documented that assault here on the Legal AF Pod. This religious public school in Oklahoma is the latest Christian nationalist test case. They convinced a handful of political appointees to create the nation's first religious public charter school, a blueprint for other conservative states to follow. Americans United for Separation of Church and State recognized the danger and promptly filed a lawsuit to stop St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School in Oklahoma. AU says that this is the latest effort to blur the lines between church and state. AU believes taking tax money and directing it to a religious school that will indoctrinate students in one particular faith and plans to discriminate against students, families, and staff who don't adhere to its beliefs goes against the founding principles of our country. Americans United will keep fighting for freedom without favor, equality without exception. Keep up with this issue at au.org/legalaf. That's au.org/legalaf. Now look at this. Let's take the plane up 5,000 feet, look back down, and what this means. And one of the things I must have missed in the earlier reporting and kind of putting this story together for this hot take is the role of Mohammed bin Salman, who is the evil leader of Saudi Arabia, effectively, who gave the green light to chop Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post reporter and U.S. citizen, into little pieces in collaboration with another one of our frenemy countries. Okay, he gave the direct order to hit over the objection of his private investment fund, the Saudi PIF, that has $62 billion to invest around the world. It's the same organization, the PIF, that's trying to figure out how to buy American golf, how to buy the PGA, effectively, and all of the golfers associated with it for Live Golf. Same company, PIF. Even they, as corrupt as that country is, the PIF is by extension, even the board was like, Jared Kushner has absolutely no experience in running a fund, has no track record in making investments. We have serious concerns about him. Unsatisfactory, there are many, this is their quote, unsatisfactory aspects of the company. And a lack of inexperience gives us pause. And all Mohammed bin Salman heard was, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump could get reelected? Approved. And we're not just talking like a couple of shekels here. We're talking like approved $2 billion. Effectively, if we're doing the math, it's about, 1.5%. ish of their fund total went to Jared Kushner, and now he's raised other money on the backs of that. Always from frenemies of the Americans, places that he covered while he was special assistant to the president. Making money in the grift while in office. And like I said earlier in the hot take, I would feel slightly differently if the Trump family and their caravan moved away and never were to return to the White House. What's done is done. They're not the first family to ever try to make money on the backs of having been the president or in the White House. Everybody does it one way or the other. Speeches at $200,000, $300,000, $1 million, $200,000 a pop, $1 million a pop. Books for $30, $40 million advances. Boards of director positions for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They've all done it. Clinton, Obama, Reagan, Bush, the other Bush. They all did it. They all do it. But like this is a grand theft auto in plain sight. This is like us standing back and watching as, Jared Kushner and his family took sledgehammers to the Tiffany window and grabbed all the diamonds. That's where we're at right now. And I want to bring it to your attention on hot takes like this one. Foreign policy for sale, presidency for sale. So when people are making their decisions about who they want to put in the White House, I don't want the old guy. I don't know which one that is. They both are. But don't you want the old guy who's not corrupt? Don't you want the old guy whose family is not taking in money from people who are barely our allies, who were responsible for 9/11 and all? Let's not go 20 years ago. Saudi Arabia, it was already established by our intelligence community that they funded and supported and indirectly helped plan 9/11. That's Saudi. But now, you want to open up a bunch of fast food chains in Brazil? Let's do it. $3 billion, please. This is a family that's corrupt. This is a family that does not care about Americans, average or otherwise. They only care about themselves. And they won't stop until we stop them. They will not stop. This is a kleptocracy. It was a kleptocracy when he was in office. We throw a lot of adjectives on the Trump presidency. It's fascistic. It's terroristic. It's stochastic terrorism. It's on the road to nationalism. It's borderline. The American first is borderline. What Charles Lindbergh was leading in this country during the 40s, right? This close to socialism / fascism. Yes, it's also a kleptocracy. They were busy stealing everything that wasn't nailed down, and they're continuing to do it.
It is Thursday, the 18th of April of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she is still ailing a bit from that knee surgery, though getting around quite a bit better. But we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we apologize for yesterday. At the last minute, and we had done actually quite a bit of work and did a little bit of pre-recording. But at the last minute, we got a call from the doctors asking us to come in a tad earlier than her appointed time. Her being my mom, because she had a medical appointment follow-up from her surgery. Recent surgery, and to get the little tape sutures out of her neck, and her neck looks really good from where they went in. But they had to do a couple of tests, and now we're going to be getting ready to do the other side. So sorry about that from yesterday. Had to run into Medford, and that's about a half hour or so away. And just didn't have a time to fit in the show, get out the door, and get to Medford on time. So I'll say once again, apologize for that, but I gotta be honest, Right now, my mom takes precedent. Okay? Okay. I know you understand. Anyway, so we had Donnie Trump missed his nap time in Manhattan yesterday because there was nothing happened in Manhattan. Marshawn had other work to do, had other cases to attend. Donald Trump's not the only case in that court. And I love how the guy, he goes out there and goes to a bodega. And some in the media are pointing to that spectacle as being proof that, Donald Trump is loved. Once again, staged. Okay, let's be clear. People just spontaneously in New York go to a out-of-the-way bodega to cheer on a mobster. Not usually. But, he had an advance team, got the bodega ready, because, they got to get the bodega ready. And got a crowd, cheered them on, led the cheers, just like. It was so reminiscent of the Brooks Brothers riot. I just have to say. Okay, well, Donald Trump has a long history of hiring actors to fill the seats and to lead the cheers. You get a cheer going, it takes off. Then you don't have to have your actor lead the cheers because the cheers are just coming. 4 more years. Yeah, we'll see. But boy, the way the media is putting out these meetings with Trump's shadow government and world leaders as if the world leaders are convinced that this guy's going to win. And so they're making good with him now so that they're not left off by the wayside like that guy that got pushed out of the way. Wasn't that from Liechtenstein? The guy from Liechtenstein. They're at the big world conference, and they're coming down these stairs, all these different world leaders, and the guy in Liechtenstein was in Trump's way. And instead of Trump moving around the guy, because he's coming down from behind him, he just grabs him by the shoulders and moved him out of the way. Get out of my way. Then he stood there with his jut jaw like Mussolini. Put it up a little bit, jut jaw. And, yeah. So, they don't want to be the guy from Liechtenstein. Who does? Okay. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we're going to foil the Russian and Chinese plots to mess up our elections again. I love it how the retort from MAGA is always, Russia, Russia, Russia. And I'm like, well, how about China too? Okay. Let's be clear. He didn't meet with Xi for nothing, huh? So let alone the corruption that's going on in the Supreme Court. Boy, what the heck is going on? They're turning it into Chrysler's People's Court. Yeah. My God. And even Thomas being able to sit and ask questions. This guy was like quiet for decades and decades and decades. And then just before all this coup, sedition, insurrection stuff happens, he starts yapping and he can't shut up. I don't know, it's like the Manchurian Candidate. He's been triggered. He's been activated, and now we're all going to see, and we're all going to pay the price. And it's not just old Clarence either. God. And then you got Amy and the liberal justices, meaning, the other 3 women, questioning whether the states have any of these rights to begin with. I just... Oh, my God. Okay. We're talking about January 6th defendants, I'm sorry. Because just previously, they, were saying that, the law is what we say it is. And now they're saying the same thing. That's basically what I'm trying to get across here. We say what the law is. That's what textualism is about. That's what originalism is about. It's so original, it's a fiction. Oh, boy. Okay. Otherwise. Not is anymore. You can't define the word is. It's now otherwise. What does otherwise mean? Otherwise means what it means. Otherwise, any crime that is perpetrated to stop the peaceful transition of power, and we all saw it live on TV. But Leonard Leo and all the others didn't spend decades and decades and decades of stacking every level of our court system for them to be ruled by the law. Give me a break. And why is it? I'll tell you why. Because lessers have been allowed to vote and become part of the democratic process, and they will not be ruled by lessers. Lessers by dint of race, lessers by dint of class, lessers who don't have any right to be part of this government other than being worker bees. Get to work, Joe. Worker Joe. What can we do about it? Well, we already know, and I'm preaching to the choir, and I apologize, but it has to be stated. We have to vote out these monsters in such overwhelming numbers that they can't cheat again. We have to make sure that the Electoral College isn't utilized in some backhanded way when we do vote them in such overwhelming numbers. Jeez. Okay. And I got to tell you, this is feeling like 2016 all over again, because the same types of behaviors are occurring in such weird fashions. Down to, like individuals who are, being triggered, like the Manchurian Candidate too. The weirdest things are coming out of people's mouths all at the same time. So the same sort of thing is happening, but I will say that, my actual neighbors are really susceptible to this BS. I got one guy convinced that his grandkids are being or were being taught by essentially devils trying to turn them into furries, and there's litter boxes in the closets. And first of all, the litter boxes, I think, were to soak up the blood if the kids ever got slaughtered by, the regular school killings, mass killings. Give everybody a gun. I think that's what it was for. In some school, one school did this and it got blown out of proportion. And now everybody thinks, they're turning them into furries. They don't even know what furries are. They have an idea that's something to do with sex. It's this close to spaceships taking their kids up into space, sexually abusing them, then bringing them back. Why not just keep them flying back to their sex abuse planet? Jeez. Why would they bring them back? This is what happens when you have an uneducated public who haven't read enough science fiction, no matter how bad it is. All right. Okay, well, I could go on about that, but I'm not going to, because we actually have a curated show, and we had quite a bit of a long opening at the top there, because Kushner is a crook. And I don't know, world leaders are acting like the fix is in. I have an idea that we can fix the fix, and that's what really makes them mad. You weren't supposed to win. We had it all fixed. Yeah, well, too bad. This is America, pal. What do we have in store for you? Well, 23 Republican attorneys general attacked the Biden administration's stated goal of pursuing environmental justice, calling it a form of racial engineering. Yeah. They think we're going to replace them because of the environment. All right. Well, the environment will probably replace them on its own, won't it? New Mexico voters for the first time can now sign up to receive absentee ballots permanently. Well, that's good news. And a California lawmaker wants to require business owners and landlords to disclose their identities under legislation aimed at cracking down on questionable LLCs. Well, that's more good news. If I could just spit it out. After the break. We then move to the chef's table, because that's what we do. Where Switzerland's lower house moved to ban use of Nazi and extremist symbols that could stir violence. They're just following Germany's lead from decades ago. And Australia Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the French construction worker who stopped a man who stabbed 6 people to death from killing more shoppers in a Sydney shopping mall is welcome to stay in the country as long as he likes. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Well, another day and another long rant on my part that precludes our giving grateful thanks to those who work so hard here at Netroots Radio, keeping it up and running and everything else. And also gratefulness to all of you loyal listeners out there who've been so loyal and keep us afloat. So thank you all. We're going to tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it is by Michael Phillis out of the Associated Press. Republican attorneys general attacked the Biden administration's stated goal of pursuing environmental justice, calling it a form of racial engineering. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody and 22 other GOP officials, MAGA officials, asked the EPA on Tuesday yesterday to stop using civil rights laws to investigate actions and policies that result in harm to black people or other minority groups, even unintentionally, more than white residents. The EPA should be focusing on enforcing the environmental laws passed by Congress, not so-called environmental justice, which is a euphemism for Biden's extreme agenda. We redline neighborhoods, so the only place you can live is next to the refinery. And then when you have decades and decades and decades of cancers and respiratory illnesses and lesions and anything else, smelly water that catches on fire out of the tap. Yeah, we're not going to give those people environmental justice because it would be racist against white people. I hate these bigots. Okay, back to the story at hand. The petition is unlikely to convince the Biden administration to back away from an issue, EPA administration, Michael Reagan, and of course we know Michael Reagan is black, and that's another reason why the GOP MAGA is so out of sorts. Well, he's taken pains to highlight. Reagan, for example, went on a, quote, journey for justice. No relation. The tour is not me. To places like the industrial stretch of Louisiana, typically called Cancer Alley, to show how majority black communities living near polluters were being hurt. To address such harms, the EPA has turned in part to a section of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 called Title VI to open investigations and pressure states to make changes. The petition, in an election year, is the latest in the Republicans' expanding fight against federal policies aimed at addressing historical racial discrimination, and they believe the courts are on their side because Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation and the Family Research Council, the Commission for Prosperity or whatever that is, they've been working for decades and decades and decades to stack the courts, and they think that the courts are on their side. And I don't know. We'll see. Well, they cited the recent Supreme Court decision that eliminated affirmative action in college admissions, arguing it shows the court is wary of race-conscious federal policies. They mean race-conscious if it helps anybody but white people. And when I say they, I don't mean SCOTUS. We mean the MAGA SCOTUS. Let's be clear. Well, the EPA declined to comment, citing ongoing litigation around the issue. Title VI aims to prevent discrimination in programs that receive federal funds. The agency can investigate allegations of discrimination, publish their findings, and pressure states and local governments to agree to change policies. The federal government can yank funding if they find a Title VI violation. Well, I guess the states and these attorneys general found out they hadn't gotten rid of all of the Great Society, and now they're working on it. Hard-working staff at the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Registered voters in New Mexico for the first time can join a permanent list to receive an absentee ballot by mail in future elections, state election regulators announced today. The Secretary of State's office said it is accepting online requests for absentee ballots ahead of the June 4th primary on the website nmvote.org, where qualified voters can opt into the permanent list. Previously, voters had to request an absentee ballot with each election in a voting process that could involve 3 or 4 mail deliveries, and with Joy messing up the mail, this is a nice workaround now, isn't it? Yes, it is, and you know there's going to be opposition to it. Vociferous and ferocious opposition. Now, absentee ballots can be returned by mail or by hand at county clerk's offices or ballot drop boxes in some areas. The deadline for requesting an absentee ballot in the state's June 4 primary is May 21st. New Mexico's permanent absentee ballot list was authorized under 2023 legislation aimed at expanding access to the ballot in New Mexico. The law also requires that each of New Mexico's 33 counties maintain at least 2 monitored ballot drop boxes, though county clerks can request an exemption. Voting by absentee ballot is secure and efficient, and it's an efficient way to make your voice heard, and the new permanent absentee ballot list option for voters is yet another way we've increased the convenience of voting, Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver said in a statement. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A California lawmaker wants to require businesses and landlords to disclose their identities under legislation aimed at cracking down on opaque ownership structures that have enabled some companies to skirt state laws without facing consequences. Limited liability companies and similar corporations in the U.S. are often formed to protect a business owner's personal assets. In California, the world's 5th largest economy, such businesses are already required to register with the Secretary of State and share information, including the name of the business, its address, and the name and names of its executives or representatives. But Democratic State Senator Maria Elena Durazo said that is not enough. She also wants the public to know who actually owns the company. Her bill would require these companies to list anyone who owns at least 25% of the company's assets on its registration with the state. It would apply to all LLCs and similar corporations, regardless of the size. Durazo said the lack of that crucial information has allowed people to set up business structures where one company is owned in the name of another, all to shield their identities from the public, government officials, and even law enforcement agencies. In many cases, local and state officials must spend significant time and resources to track down the owners before they can charge or sue the business for violating state laws, if they can find them at all. With support from labor, housing, and environmental groups, Durazo's bill passed a key legislative committee yesterday, Wednesday. There was no debate. It needs a second committee vote before reaching the Senate floor. A similar proposal last year did not survive the legislature's suspense file, a mysterious process where lawmakers decide, with no explanation, whether bills should move forward or not. Okay, well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Here's how the voting system works, or doesn't. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In November 2026, Crystal Mason, thinking she was doing her civic duty, went to the polls to cast her vote. But her name was not on the voting roll, so Ms. Mason did what typically happens. She cast a provisional ballot. It turns out that Ms. Mason was not eligible to cast a real ballot because she was on federal supervised release. That's not a voting disqualification in many states, but it is in Texas, where she and her 3 children lived. Everyone agrees Ms. Mason didn't know that. But Texas prosecutors didn't care at all. They maintained lack of criminal intent was irrelevant. All that matters was that she illegally cast a provisional ballot, and she was convicted of voter fraud and sentenced to 5 years. 5 years for casting a provisional ballot that was never counted. Finally, in April 2024, a Texas court rejected that theory and acquitted her. So, all's well that ends well? Not really. First, Ms. Mason had to live through years and years with a 5-year prison sentence hanging over her head. Second, the case sadly may teach people who have had a brush with the law to not risk trying to register and vote. The stakes are too high. That's wrong, but fortunately, Ms. Mason has taught us another lesson about fortitude and the importance of fighting for your rights. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. After the Georgia legislature passed its omnibus voter suppression bill SB 202 in 2021, a firestorm of criticism erupted, including the moving of that year's Major League Baseball All-Star Game out of the state. April 15th, a trial began in federal court to throw out a small part of that law, one of 8 active lawsuits. The bill came on the heels of GOP losses for both U.S. Senate seats and debunked accusations by former President Donald Trump of widespread voter fraud. Among the provisions of the SB 202 Georgia Election Integrity Act were a ban on providing food and drink to waiting voters, restrictions on groups from distributing absentee ballot applications, limits on the number and location of drop boxes, more layers of ID requirements for mail-in ballots, allowing a voter to more easily challenge the eligibility of other voters, and changing rules on mail ballot processing, among many other restrictions. The trial, which began April 15th, challenges just the law's restrictions on distribution of vote-by-mail applications. The law established hefty penalties for workers from community groups, churches, and other pro-voter groups from reaching elderly, disabled, students, economically disadvantaged, and others who may not vote otherwise. Those groups argue the law violates the First and 14th Amendments. Find more on the lawsuits at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1908. That was the day the song "We Have Fed You All 1,000 Years" first appeared. Originally titled "The Cry of Toil," it was printed in the Industrial Workers of the World publication, the Industrial Union Bulletin. It was initially attributed to British colonist writer Rudyard Kipling. The song is now understood as an anonymous reworking of Kipling's 1893 poem, The Song of the Dead. The song was wildly popular and reprinted in many Union journals. "We Have Fed You All" was an early example of how the IWW used music and songs in its work. IWW songs projected labor history, struggles, and politics. From union organizing to strike activity to defense cases, Wobbly sought to create a working-class culture and community. The IWW is well known for its Little Red Songbook, which contains some of the most popular anthems of the labor movement. The first verse of We Have Fed You All 1,000 Years reads, "We have fed you all for 1,000 years, and you hail us still unfed. Though there's never a dollar of all of your wealth, but marks the workers dead. We have yielded our best to give you rest, and you lie in crimson wool. And if blood be the price of all your wealth, good God, we've paid in full." The late Wobbly singer, Utah Phillips, revived the song more recently.
There's never a mine blown skyward now, but we're buried alive for you. And there's never a wreck drift shoreward now, but we are a ghastly crew. Go and reckon our dead by the forges red and the factory.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit, highs expected in the mid to upper 70s. Oh my, much warmer than yesterday. Abundant sunshine throughout the day, winds light and variable. Partly cloudy skies tonight with lows in the mid 40s, winds light and variable. And then mainly sunny tomorrow with highs once again around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, winds light and variable. Looks like grass pollen is rated high here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 32 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is moderate and has ticked down to level 5. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.1 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 56 and sunny. Rome is 64 and fair. Kabul is 48 and cloudy. Looks like Hong Kong is 70 degrees with rain. Tokyo is 60 degrees with rain showers. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 56 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 and fair. Chicago, Illinois is 53 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 46 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The lower house of the Swiss Parliament yesterday, Wednesday, followed in the footsteps of the Senate, or the upper house, in approving a measure that would ban the use of, public wearing, or display of Nazi and racist symbols that could foment extremist hate or violence. The proposals, years in the making, goes beyond a simple ban on Nazi memorabilia, which had failed in the past in Parliament, to include other forms of extremist symbols that could stir hatred or violence. The National Council in the capital Bern, in a 133-38 vote, with 17 abstentions, passed. Most political groups backed the measure and overcame opposition from the right-wing Swiss People's Party, which has the most seats in the two chambers. The vote put Switzerland on track to join other European countries that have enacted similar bans. Efforts to push for tougher legislation have accelerated in recent months in the wake of a surge of anti-Semitic attacks across Europe and beyond that accompanied the start of the latest Israel-Hamas war in Gaza more than 6 months ago. Today in Switzerland, it is possible, even permitted, to fly a flag with a swastika on the balcony. It's possible to fly a flag with the image of the SS on the windshield of your car. It's possible to make a Hitler salute in the public space, said lawmaker Raphael Maheim in a debate preceding the vote. He said that until yesterday's vote, such actions were banned only if they were linked to sympathy for Nazi ideology, not whether they spread it or stir hatred. This situation is intolerable, he added. However, Zurich lawmaker Barbara Steinem of the Swiss People's Party disagreed. Our society must be able to deal with the fact that there will always be a base of a few insignificant cranks, she said. Yeah, insignificant. Steinman further argued that the new law will do little to stop Jews from being afraid in an anti-Semitic climate because they've worked so hard to make sure they will always be afraid. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Australia's Prime Minister said a French construction worker who confronted a man who stabbed 6 people to death in a Sydney shopping mall is welcome to stay in the country as long as he likes. Damien Gurat, who was nicknamed Bollard Man on social media after security camera footage showed him standing at the top of an escalator on Saturday and menacing Joel Couchy with a plastic bollard or a barrier post as he approached. Couchy fled down the escalator and people on Garot's floor were safe. His temporary Australian work visa was due to expire in July until Prime Minister Anthony Albanese intervened. I say this to Damien, who was dealing with his visa applications, that you are welcome here. You are welcome to stay as long as you like, Albanese told reporters. This is someone who would be welcoming and become an Australian citizen, although that would, of course, be a loss for France, the Prime Minister added. Gouraud's lawyer, Belinda Robinson, told SBS News the government had provided an assurance late Tuesday that he would be given an Australian permanent resident visa. Gouraud was one of a number of people praised for intervening in the attack. Officials have said the toll could have been much higher. Police said the attacker targeted women. 5 were among those killed. Cauchy also killed at least a dozen others, or injured at least a dozen others, including a 9-month-old baby whose mother was killed before a police officer shot him dead. Gouraud also has been assured that Australia's welcome mat won't be withdrawn if Albanese's government loses elections due next year. The opposition party also wants him to stay in Australia. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Appétit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.